Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fifth Avenue Cinema Podcast, a podcast about paper mache, mohawks, and wanting to go to sleep. We're coming to you somewhat live from the safety of our homes and giving you the latest in all things cinema. My name is Genevieve. I use she, her pronouns. I am the projectionist and podcast host here. And today I'm going to shout out Fiona Apple again. I know I think I shouted her out on a different one, but I listened to her whole discography today. So good. I'm fine. And I am joined by...
Hello, this is Owen. I use he, him pronouns. Do we say title? I guess I'm publicity coordinator. And I'm going to shout out two people. This is going to be a call out. One is going to be Maddie, who isn't going to be here today. I'm sure they're going to be listening to this, so hello. And also Tracy, to see if he listens to the podcast. This is a call out, Tracy. But yes, and I'm joined by
Nayeli. I am the podcast editor, maybe soon to be actual events coordinator. Yeah. We got a request, but we got to decline it right now. I use she, they pronouns, and my shout out goes to Robin Peck something. I'm forgetting his last name, with the lead singer of Fleet Foxes, because I've just been listening to them, and he recently came out with like an NPR tiny desk like at home thingy, and it's so good, so soothing. And I'm gonna need that after watching this fucking movie. So
he's from Seattle. I thought he's from like Washington. I know. Pecknold, yeah. Robin Pecknold, pretty cool guy. Yeah, but yes, yeah. The movie. Back to the movie.
Yeah, with that introduction, today we are talking about After Hours, directed by Martin Scorcese and released in 1985.
Why don't you just go home?
I've been asking myself that one all night long.
So what happened? Why can't you?
I met this girl tonight, okay, in a coffee shop.
I feel like something incredible is really going to happen here.
So when I got home, I gave her a call. On the cab on the way down here, all my money flew out the window. I didn't really get along with her that well.
What's the matter?
I said, I want to see a plaster of Paris bagel and cream cheese paperweight. Now cough it up.
And it was Owen who programmed this film, so I'll go ahead and let you get started.
Yes, I programmed this film. I wanted everyone to have a mini panic attack, I guess. No, I didn't have one when I watched it. I thought it was funny, and I enjoyed it. It has a lot of different moving parts that I'm just a huge fan of. I love the 80s and a lot of the different stuff about it. And I think this movie is like a perfect representation of that time, at least in America, because, United States.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also thought it was pretty funny. It was anxiety inducing, but I like that it takes place over one night. I love movies like that.
Me too.
Got one later in the program that also only takes place over one night. I think that's cool. I always enjoy this in films I like because it's so satisfying, but I love when it's like everything has like a later purpose, like a Chekhov's gun type situation. Yes. Like I loved that, how everything that was like mentioned at the beginning would like show up. Like I just thought that was really interesting. A word that has come to my mind while thinking about the film is Kafkaesque.
Yes. If you read any article about this movie, especially scholarly, peer edited articles, shout out Google Scholar and JSTOR, you will see Kafkaesque tied to this movie. It's very yes.
What is that? As a non-film nerd, despite being in this job, what is that?
Well, Franz Kafka is an author, not a filmmaker. But like the only one that I've read by him is The Metamorphosis, about Gregor Samsa, who wakes up as a big bug. A lot of it is like about the oppression of like the workplace and like
very
culture.
Existential. Yeah. Very dreary. Yeah, I've also never read anything, but I went on a date with someone who read it and explained it to me. So That's what I got from it.
The Metamorphosis is pretty good. I think I like to make jokes about waking up as a bug. But anyway.
Oh my God. No, there's this like book meme account that I follow, and like they often repost this like meme of like a bug wake in a bed.
Yeah, that's the
What
Metamorphosis.
that's referencing. Oh my fucking God.
Yeah.
This is like
Wow.
Niley will get this is like Ethan explaining to Trisha like what memes are on the H3 podcast. This is great. That's another podcast reference. Shout out to that podcast. Great.
Owen, would you like to summarize the film?
Yes.
And we'll...
If it's even possible, because there's so much that happens. Well, I guess context behind the film, I guess. Martin Scorcese, if you don't know who he is, I don't know how.
What are you doing?
Yeah, he's like huge now, but this was kind of his like return to form, at least in the eye of the public, as he had Last Temptation of Christ, which followed King of Comedy, which were relatively like huge flops for his career and kind of messed with his trajectory after having such a huge movie like Taxi Driver, which obviously is so huge in like film culture, popular culture references today. So with this movie, he kind of returns to a more gritty, it's low budget for, it's even not that low budget for the time, but still it's like it's lower budget and very like scaled back, more natural setting. It's not like it's in your face with like what happens, but it's not like too visually crazy. And the interesting thing that I read in learning about this was that it actually was passed up initially by Tim Burton, who I can definitely see how this movie could be made by Tim Burton, because I think it definitely has that like weird like aura around it, but it's such a like fun but also neurotic movie with Scorsese directing it. I don't know what it would be more fantastical, obviously, because
Yeah,
Tim
I would say
Burton,
I think Tim Burton would have like leaned more into like the surrealist elements of it.
for sure.
And it wouldn't be as grounded in reality, but
yeah. But also this movie's like pretty, I guess now looking back on it, some people say it's underrated in his catalog, which is like, I mean, he has a ton of very well like renowned movies, but it's also influenced a lot of stuff. Uncut Gems, which we were talking about before, kind of the main character like just taking a lot of L's, like any film genre. That's what this movie establishes, is like basically everything this guy does is messed up, or he messes up.
yeah, I thought this movie is what it's like to be a white man in cancel culture.
I liked that. I really did. It's very, yeah, it's funny. We'll get into it. I made a whole list. I had to recall a list of everything that went wrong to this guy, and it's like a whole page long in our outline.
Oh my God.
Yes. But it also influenced like a lot of Steven Soderbergh's work, which he said he saw this movie 12 times in theaters back in the day.
Oh,
he loved it so much. Yes. And then obviously more recently in like pop culture, not in film, but The Weeknd's like mega hit album with the same name, which obviously takes a lot of thematic reference from the movie itself. And I know from like seeing him post about it, he has a poster of the film Abel the Weeknd in his house, so he's a huge fan. Yeah. Yes. Also, like I said back earlier, very 80s. Why I picked it, because I picked two films from the 80s this time, because I like to pair my stuff with a theme. But it also introduces kind of the idea of a very funny subculture, especially in American like capitalism, yuppie culture, which if you are a business major, you've met a million of these people. It basically means like young urban professionals, which is what this main character is. and which kind of blossomed a lot, especially in popular culture in the 80s, because businesses moving to the urban setting and like expanding with skyscrapers and all that stuff. And so it was becoming a lot more of like a thing in commercials and in movies. I know another director I like a lot of his movies who critiques a lot of similar things about it is David Cronenberg has a lot of stuff about that in his movies, which there's also a cool tie-in with his movies where the score is actually done by the same guy who does a lot of like his early stuff. Howard
And
Shore,
Lord
who
of the
did
Rings.
yes, which is really interesting how different that is because it's like very synthy and weird at times. I have it actually saved to my my Apple library because I don't know, I just like it. The clock ticking is really fun.
Yeah, the like clock ticking and where it almost sounded like a heartbeat.
Yes, it's weird but fun. But yeah, it's also super melodramatic and like dark and nocturnal, especially because it's taking place at the wee hours of night. But yes, and then there's also
After hours.
yes, at the after hours, which one of my favorite parts of the movie is when they say the title. I always love
was
that in
laughing
movies.
so hard at
It's
that.
so funny. I love it because it's so blatantly like you know he also got a kick out of doing it because he like pitches the slow pitch just to like, you know, hit it out of the park. It's like such a good delivery. But also the final introduction kind of part that's very funny to me is the interesting casting choices. Probably the funniest being Cheech and Chong being like the burglar guys.
Oh my god, yeah.
Which
Yeah,
is just so funny. And then the storyline with them, like what happened with when they're taking the sculpture, but she really just gave it to them, and then they break the TV and lose the sculpture. I thought that was very funny. And then also a personal favorite of mine being that, and shout out to my sister because one of her favorite movies and my favorite movies growing up, Home Alone, both the parents, the dad is the bartender and the mom is the ice cream truck woman. And then the final one, which Genevieve pointed out, and I didn't even notice after watching it twice. But he does this a lot
Yeah, like
in his
he's
own
usually
movies.
Marty usually
Yes.
cameos. I
But
just
yes.
loved it. I loved this specific cameo because he's in like the like punk metal club and he's like up on like the, I guess you could say like the big catwalk with a light just like shining
So
it.
funny.
What was funny about that like the punk scene is like, so the entire time I'm like freaking out because it's making me so anxious, and I'm like watching it with Christian, and you know obviously he can tell how affected I am by it, but then we get to like the punk scene and I'm like, oh cool, and he was like, really, like you're not anxious about this part? And I'm like, hell no, it makes me miss going to shows. And he's like, how are you not anxious at this part? And I was like, yo, that's where I want to be right now.
That is true. I mean, like a callback to our previous podcast, which you should listen to if you haven't already, you know, the music, the dance affiliated, like for me, the COVID fear, like seeing it in the context of today, seeing all those people on top of each other, like sweating, like running around, probably punching each other, stuff like that is just like, ugh. That was the most anxiety inducing scene because I forgot about it the second time around.
Wow, very opposite for us
Yes.
then.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting to mention that apparently the beginning of the story was plagiarized by the writer Joseph Minion. Yeah, he plagiarized it from a Joe Frank monologue titled Lies that played on NPR Playhouse that unfortunately I couldn't find anywhere to listen to for free. But like some of the dialogue and plot elements were lifted verbatim. Yeah, eventually Joe Frank filed a lawsuit and like received a settlement. But like literally after watching it, I was like, wow. And like looking at like the IMDb credits, I was like, wow, why hasn't he like written anything else really? And then I looked more into it and I was like, oh, that's probably why.
There it is. Yeah. It's also the movies, like the rights to it were also really weird because it like the actor, the lead actor, whose name I'm just completely blanking on. Oh shoot. Well, anyway, he owned the rights to the film, and so
Wow.
did. And then he gave it. He was like auction, well, like sharing it around to people to be so that he could be the lead in it. And with also forgetting, I'm horrible with names. The female character he meets in the beginning and who I don't want to.
Marcy.
Well, yes, Marcy, whoever she is in real life. Sorry, I forgot your name. Campaigning with both of them as the lead actors. What you said about the credits for the screenplay, there was also some weird thing where some film student was involved with the writing of the script as well, like adapted from the adaptation, like the guy that plagiarized or something like that. I read that, which is really odd.
Yeah, so the plot. So it starts with Paul. He is a word processor at, like a big office.
Boring.
Yeah, it was like, the boring job that,
A nothing job.
Yeah. And he meets a girl in a coffee shop late one night who asks, he's reading The Tropic of Cancer, and the girl like comments on it, and they end up like, kind of exchanging numbers, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he calls her later that night, and it's already late. So then he goes to her friend's place that she's staying at, and then just a bunch of crazy stuff starts happening. This is when he starts taking the L's.
Yes.
Back
to back.
Yeah, the rest of the movie is detailing this basically like never-ending night for Paul. That's like a nightmare.
Yes.
Like, sometimes you can't even feel bad for him because it's like he's the one making these stupid decisions that are leading him to these circumstances.
Yeah.
Why are you going to so many people's, like, random people's homes? Like, what is wrong with you?
It is very odd. I know that on my first viewing, because I watched it a while, like I don't know, maybe almost a year ago now, probably. Time flies. But I know on the first one, I definitely sympathize a lot more with him than I do now. Just because I think when you're so caught up in everything that's happening, like for the first time, it's very easy to be like, damn, how can you be this bad at like life? Because everything he does is like so. I think for me, the second time, I totally picked up on how like shallow or like how he just has no concept of like emotion at all, which I think is hilarious because I totally think it's on purpose that he's kind of like made to look this bad, and a lot of his problems are because of that. I think
I'm sure that's like a critique of yuppies in general, and like how their problems are self-made and they get into them.
As I was saying, listing off all the things that happens to him in this movie, and I really, when I was trying to do that, I even tried to think of things that like were explicitly just bad that happened to him, not things that like I could interpret as bad. Like, for example, like pretty much every interaction he had with Marcy, I could personally say was definitely handled incorrectly, but it wasn't exactly like it affected him necessarily, besides like stuff later on. It was more of like in the moment, he just looked like an idiot. Like I said, the list is a whole page long, the beginning with when he goes to write down her number, the pen won't work like at first. He's like, which happens to me all the time, which is what I thought was so funny. But the pen doesn't even work to write down her number, which already is like, after second watch, I was like, this is so good. I didn't catch this, but this is so good because it's like such a big foreshadowing of like just everything that happens. But he does get the number, which then eventually just spirals everything out of control. But then it goes to the taxi to get there, where he loses his money out the window, except the pocket change that he has, because the driver.
Which was his fault, by the way, because 100%. He took the bill out.
Which was dumb. So dumb.
Yeah. It was like, why are you holding it by the window?
Especially when the guy was driving like a maniac. And the window was down.
That the window is open.
Yes. It was ridiculous. And then he loses the dollar, which ends up finding him again, which is another one of those funny tie-ins, which I don't remember. Do you remember when? I remember how they paper mache it, but I don't remember how does it just randomly appear there, or does he find it before and like.
I think it's because the roommate left and then came back.
Oh, she
so
found
it did
right.
randomly appear, but it like you kind of know how because the roommate did leave and come back.
Right. Which the roommate leaving adds to the next thing,
God.
which is when he meets the sculptress, who was one of my favorite characters because she's very like aloof, which you know fits my kind of person. And the lore about her is also very funny. The paperweight
Wait, what's
thing.
the lore?
It's
Oh, yeah.
the bagel paperweight made of
plaster of Paris bagel and
Yes.
cream cheese paperweight.
So good. But also that interaction. She's like, "Oh, my shoulders hurt from doing this all day," and he's like, "Well, I'll give you a massage," and then he just immediately like puts it on. Like,
so strange to me that she was just like,
it was so weird. But then
you're here, yeah, like he's there for another girl, and like what is?
It's so weird.
I was
And it's
just
like,
yelling at the screen.
The no like emotional or social intelligence immediately hits. But with that, he goes to massage her, and then the funny part is she falls asleep. But he also like unstrapped her bra to be able to massage like her shoulders. So when when Marcy comes back, it looks like he did something to her, but he just like sat there waiting after she fell asleep. But then it just like makes him look like just a complete idiot and a horrible person if
literally
you have no
as
context.
he was waiting, I was like, fix her straps.
Yes.
Fix her straps. You dumbass. You look so bad right now. So yeah, then him and Marcy, the girl that he met earlier, are like sitting in her room, like talking. She reveals all this personal stuff, and he's kind of like, whoa, I don't know how I feel about this. And then like some other, I don't even remember all that happens. A lot of stuff happens. And then they smoke a joint, right?
Yes.
Okay, I was real interested in this joint because she says it's from Colombia. And then when he smokes it, he's like, this isn't marijuana. And she's like, I don't know. And so I was like, Colombia? Did he just smoke crack or like
I didn't
coke?
even pick up on that.
Because then he's like, then that's when he starts being like, and like freaking out. And then he like,
oh yeah,
like is really rude to her all of a sudden.
Yeah,
and then, like, leaves. And so I was like, so this man is like cracked out this night or like methed out. Like I was under the impression that they like smoked coke or something.
That's possible.
That was a very interesting moment because like at first he turns it down. So I just assumed like, oh, he probably just isn't super into that. Especially since like he's like, you know, he's in this like art loft, you know, with like kind of like the freaks, you know, but he's like this business dude.
Yes.
And so I just assumed he wasn't into it. So then we got to like the point where he was smoking. He's like, I know my shit. You're lying to me. Like I was like, it was just very like, okay, who really is this person? You know, because we don't learn anything about him really, except for like the stupid things that he's doing in the moment.
That may be possible. Because I think after that, wow, this is like opening my mind up because it's like it becomes so much more like neurotically centric on his ego, like on people attacking him after that moment. Because before that, it's just he's having interactions with people that are normal, and then he's doing like he's having just like terrible luck. But then after that, it's like things start happening at him where he feels attacked and then runs away and acts like an idiot because he's paranoid. Whoa, this is crazy.
It felt like it got much more frantic after that. And like I just noticed like his behavior changed. He was like talking to all these people and like being rude and like, which we hadn't really seen before.
Yeah, because he has like weird outbursts where he immediately apologizes.
Yeah, I felt like he was like like talking faster and like all over the place. So I was like, something's up.
Or like when he tries to jump the
subway,
like that was also very like a sudden. Like there are times where like he just does things and like you just don't expect it, you know?
Yeah,
like
it's hard to even like talk because it's just like it's so weird to watch. Because I'm not a person like that, and that stuff is like if I were to see this happen, if I were to be in this circle of people in real life, man, I don't know what I would do with this guy.
You know, like how people are like, oh, you know, there's a reason why it's always like white families or white people that are getting into these horror movie messes, you know, because like a person of color, like there was so many red flags of like things that of him just to like leave it alone. Like I said, why is he going into to so many random people's homes?
I don't know.
Why is he taking somebody's fucking keys and leaving his
Yeah.
keys?
That whole
Like
situation was stressing me out. Yeah.
at some point, like I just kept hoping that he would just sit down and just like let it happen, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Or like when he's being chased by the mob, at some point you're just gonna have to give up and just let them at least like fucking explain your, you know, like if you keep running, you look guilty. Like the first
Yeah.
time that he ran, he shouldn't have ran.
That's
He
that's
should
really the
like
whole problem, yeah. Is that if he was able to actually like verbally communicate anything, he wouldn't get himself into any of the problems because initially he wouldn't have had any issues with Marcy, probably wouldn't have left. The whole thing's solved. Then you go to the next thing, which is well, the fare for the subway is like that was just terrible timing, like terrible.
Mhm.
And the guy was kind of not having it, which I get, you know, work or whatever. And then the bar,
Mhm.
which is just that whole thing is really when everything starts to tie together because what we soon find out later on is that Marcy was the bartender's girlfriend, and she huge spoiler alert. We're basically summarizing the whole movie, but she ends up killing herself, which I still somehow am confused. Did she actually use sleeping pills?
I think
Why wouldn't
so. I
she?
mean,
I don't
yeah.
know. I just thought that he somehow was more involved with it, like some unspoken thing.
He was
Well, he
saying
like
like,
yelled at her and like ran
yeah.
off, you
Right,
know?
So yeah, then he's like, it's my fault because he like rejected her.
right. Okay, well that clears that up. But then also just the waitress, which
In the bar,
Oh
yeah.
my God.
he cannot like that's the one situation that pissed me off the most, I think, with like him not being able to interact with humans because he just kept leading on just so much for like safety, which pissed me off so much because then it's like, but I think what also bites him back obviously is the fact that she ends up drawing him because she's so enamored by him that they use it for the wanted poster,
Yeah.
Which
which is
also, wait,
just
by the way, how did she draw so many posters?
I don't know.
Like, gotta copy the 24-hour copy place.
Yeah. Right, yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so there's Marcy, and then the waitress, who I think her name is like Julie, and then there's Catherine O'Hara's character, who, how does he meet her? He like runs into her somehow. I don't even remember how he
Yeah.
meets her, but she ends up that she's an ice cream truck driver. But
God.
what I thought was interesting about them is that like they're all blondes, and I was
Yeah.
wondering if they're kind of like the same person, if it's kind of like a
Wow.
fractured ego like type thing or whatever, and like
Wow.
yeah, they all
Mhm.
are representative of the same person.
Yeah, I mean, because essentially
Yeah.
he definitely sees them, well, except maybe Marcy, but he definitely sees the other two the same in this in the sense that they're both stopping him from getting back because she,
Mm-hmm.
Catherine O'Hara's character messes with the phone number, also very funny. She keeps saying numbers when he's trying to remember it. And then the other one, she just wants him to stay. She just doesn't
Yeah.
want him to go, but he's not having it. He needs to get back to the bar. Wow, I didn't think this movie was this dense. Maybe it's not. Maybe we're the ones that are
Maybe I'm just, I don't
crazy.
know. I be
But yeah,
thinking.
wow.
I just thought that was
I
an
mean,
interesting point.
well, yeah, because all of the main ladies, except for the roommate, all are blonde and like
Mhm.
short blondes.
Is the older lady that he meets at the end as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
For a
Oh,
second,
I totally forgot about her.
I thought that old lady was gonna end up being the roommate because she also paper mache, and the roommate was the one who led him there. Which that part was still that part was kind of the most confusing because it didn't really have like a reason or connection. It was just she shows up and gives him the flyer, and then she like immediately disappears, and it's like what, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I just went with it. I didn't know. I
Yeah.
was just like, yep. But I thought it was interesting that this older woman is like what he is pursuing her. He's talking to her. And then when he goes downstairs with her and she's like holding him, it felt very Freudian and like a return to the mother, to a maternal love, looking for the mom. I was like, ooh.
Wow. He also goes,
hate that.
he gets encased in something, in paper mache, back to the womb.
Not,
Ooh.
no. And
I
then he
was
gets
gonna say
stolen.
that
That
part.
was so funny.
It was. How did they lift him out? Come on.
That was so, yeah, from like a storm drain. They're like just lifting him straight out. So, yeah, and then this whole time there's like robberies going on at the same time,
Yes, right.
which is adding to like everyone's paranoia. So then everyone starts thinking that he's the thief because of circumstances, basically.
Just like the proximity to everyone who's all angry at the same time. So they're just like, oh, he's the easy target. He has to be
pretty
him.
much. Then Cheech and Chong, one of them, Pepe and what was the other guy's names? Pepe, Neil and Pepe are their names. They find him because they're coming to rob the woman whose house he's at. And one of them is like really into these sculptures, and so they take him and put him in the back of the van and are driving, and eventually they like they're driving for a while. Yeah. And eventually they take a corner like super quick and like tight, and the back door of the van flies open and Paul falls out. And guess what? It's right in front of his work building.
Yes.
But apparently preview audiences rejected an original ending where Paul didn't get out of the paper mache. Like he was just like it ended with like him being stuck, which is how I thought it was going to end originally. Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like you can't. I feel like after all that, you can't just have the guy be stuck. Like.
Really? I feel like I would have been like, damn, yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, but I think like him ending up back at work and right as the gates are opening and him just going to his desk, I feel like that is kind of a satisfying ending because it's like, okay, now it's daylight. Like that evening ran its course, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it's like the movie started with him at work and like leaving work, and then it ends with him back at work. And I think that ending makes it more Kafkaesque. Yes. Because it's kind of like never-ending cycle of like you have to get up and go to work and live in a surreal reality when you're not at work.
Yeah, I think that's why it was, just to satisfy like the political stance to the movie. Just kind of like, I mean, the reason obviously he wants to get home is because he needs to sleep, because he needs to work. And then you could also assume that he didn't want to smoke because he's afraid of the implications on the following day, which leads back to work. So it's kind of, and also the suit, he never changes except the shirt, which is, I guess, more like playful. It has stripes and it's black. I don't know if you could see it, but he does change it when he meets the girls and then everything happens. He never really leaves that mindset, I guess. Well, really he doesn't, because he doesn't think. So he's always in the same, he never changes. He's the same guy inside and out of work. He's boring. And that's the point.
Yeah. That kind of leads to like work controlling lives, and like even when you do have free time, you're still thinking like, oh, I need to go home to go to work. And like that's literally like his driving force in the film, is that he needs to get home so he can go to sleep and go to work, which is.
And then the funniest thing that I found when researching before this is that apparently fans of this movie calculated how long it would have taken him to just walk home from the girls to his like neighborhood, what he had stated was his neighborhood, I don't remember. And they calculated that it would have been an hour and 45-minute walk, which is like 10 minutes longer than the movie, but then like, I don't know, what, a sixth of the actual time that it spans in the actual like time frame of the movie.
He should honestly, he should have just walked. I've
I
done
mean-
that. Like, there's been times where I like missed the bus. There was one specific time I missed the bus, and it was like 1 a.m. after work, and I just walked.
Damn.
Wow.
Well, there is a point in the film where he's like, I'm just gonna walk home.
Yeah,
And
and
then
then
one of the ladies is like, no.
yeah, he gets tied
Is that
in
when
with
he
somebody
meets up
else.
with Sarah?
I think so, yeah, because it
And then
was
she's
done.
like,
There was
I'll
the
drive you.
rain that also stopped. Right. Yeah, he was walking home, and then she just appeared out of nowhere and was like, "What are you up to?" And then was like, "I'll drive you home." And well, she was like telling him about her job randomly, which also another connection to work. Never leaves.
I don't know. I feel like now that I've calmed down, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can appreciate the movie for what it was, but goddamn, I think it actually did give me like an anxiety attack.
Wow.
I feel like
You know
I
what?
just
I'm
watched
glad
a
that
lot
Maddie didn't watch it.
True. Not the time.
I feel like I just
Yeah.
watched a lot of like anxiety-inducing cinema.
Yeah.
Look, I can't even watch like
Yeah.
Parks and Rec, okay? Like I can't deal with this kind of shit. I watched The Office like finally like 2 years ago, but even then I skipped a lot of Michael's parts because I can't deal with that kind of shit.
He's just like too
You get like
busy, kind of
really bad like
yeah.
secondhand embarrassment.
Yeah. I don't know. I think also sometimes I can be a little bit like, I don't know, I don't think controlling is the right word, but it's like, no, you need to do this instead. And the fact that he just was doing all of the wrong things is just
Yeah.
like made me like riled up. Like, what are you doing? Stop doing these stupid things. Like you are making the wrong decisions.
When he had like the bartender's keys and then like he was like going to like check. I don't remember. He like left. I think that's when he finds Marcy. Bro, go get your keys first and then go back there.
Yeah.
He's the definition of down bad.
Thank you for listening to the Fifth Avenue Cinema podcast, where we come together to talk about all things cinema. If you liked the show today, please follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Fifth Avenue Cinema with a 5, where you can also reach us for questions or comments. You can reach us by email at film@pdx.edu. We hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as we enjoyed making it. Catch you next time, and remember, all Black Lives Matter, defund the police.